Explosions, screams, a skyline of twisted mutants. Morty stands in what used to be his neighborhood, watching former friends and teachers shuffle as Cronenberg monsters. Rick snaps open a portal behind him. This Earth is lost, irreversibly. But Rick has one last trick. Escape to another universe and leave their entire world behind. Morty's hands shake as he realizes the truth. Grandpa messed up big, and now their reality is doomed. Rick urges him forward. Don't look back. One life saved, one world lost. But at what cost? And was it worth it? Morty drops into a new backyard with a thud, knees stained by the dirt he's about to shovel. In silence, he and Rick bury their own corpses. The Rick and Morty of this new reality, who conveniently died moments ago. Morty's mind is screaming. Moments ago, he was begging Rick to fix their world, to undo the love potion gone wrong. But each antidote only made things worse until everyone became horrific Cronenberg mutations. Rick's final solution wasn't to save that world. It was to flee to a parallel one where another Rick had solved things and died so they could take his place. Now, Morty presses soil over his own alternate body, fighting back trauma. Rick just lets out a belch. To him, it's just another Tuesday. There are infinite realities, Morty, he had said. In a few of them, we got it right and then kicked the bucket. We just had to find one of those and move in. Don't think about the ones we leave behind. Rick frames it like a clean break. He even tells Morty he should be grateful. If Rick hadn't screwed up so epically, they might have been the ones who died. Morty listens, eyes unfocused. Classic 1,000-yard stare. He's shell-shocked, processing that his parents and sister in the old world are essentially gone for good. Those loved ones are now surviving in an apocalypse of Rick's making. Morty later describes it bluntly. These are the parts of Rick's adventures you don't get to see, the parts he leaves behind. This is Rick Sanchez's love in action. In a sick way, it is love. Rick ruined an entire Earth rather than let Morty get hurt by his own potion fiasco. He'd rather destroy a world than risk his grandson. Twisted loyalty or just pure ego? The contradiction hangs over that quiet burial scene. Morty saved, millions damned. And Rick's face as he pats the dirt on his alternate self's grave? Completely nonchalant. Does he even feel anything about the countless lives lost? Morty's horror suggests the obvious. This is wrong. But Rick's logic is simple. Nothing we can do, grab your shovel, Morty. No apologies, no fix, just move on. Yet, as Morty trudges into the house of his new family, we catch a glimmer of consequence. He's changed forever. Traumatized, yes, but also a bit more like Rick. He's learning the unspoken lesson. In Rick's world, some lives count and others become collateral damage. The chapter closes on a question that will haunt us. If one Rick can doom an entire planet to save one boy, what might he sacrifice to save himself? Rick just gambled an entire universe on Morty's life, and it worked. This time. But how far does his willingness to erase worlds really go? Rick isn't called the smartest man in the universe for nothing. With genius comes a god complex. Why stop at sacrificing one world when you can bend all of them to your will? Enter the central finite curve. It's a secret only revealed years later by an ex-Morty with an axe to grind. Evil Morty. He pulls back the cosmic curtain and exposes Rick's greatest trick. They built a wall around infinity, Evil Morty explains, separating all the universes where he's the smartest man alive. Every version of us grew up in the same infinite crib, built around an infinite effing baby. The baby in question? Rick. Think about that. Rick and his counterparts literally walled off entire timelines so that they'd always be top dog. Infinite universes exist where Rick isn't king, but Rick C-137, our Rick, helped lock those out of reach. He rigged the multiverse to ensure that in every reality he can travel to, he remains the apex predator. The genius among geniuses. That's not just ego, that's infinite ego. It means there are endless worlds Rick will never help, countless lives he'll never save, simply because those universes dared to produce someone smarter or a world without a Rick. Those timelines might as well not exist to him. He pruned the multiverse like a gardener snipping any flower that outshines him. Ultimate narcissism or a necessary safety measure? Here's one counterargument. Maybe Rick and the other Ricks built the curve to contain worse threats. Perhaps there are gods and monsters out there that even Rick can't beat. So isolating a safe multiverse kept his family secure. It's a comforting thought that this multiversal barricade was protective, but Evil Morty's bitter words paint a different picture. A multiverse ruled by Ricks, for Ricks, at the expense of anyone else's potential. Inside this sandbox of Ricks, an our Rick reigns. He co-founded the Citadel of Ricks, signed treaties, made a whole society to normalize infinite copies of himself, all of it resting on the silent genocide of possibility. An infinite number of universes cut off, sacrificed to the void outside the curve. Is that any less horrifying than Cronenberging one Earth? Rick basically said, only worlds where I matter get to matter, the rest banished beyond the fence. We don't see those other realities crumble on screen, but morally, Rick collapsed infinite universes into irrelevance the moment he built that wall. One could argue that's even grander than blowing up a planet. It's cosmic scale hubris. Yet again, Rick's motive can be read two ways. Twisted loyalty? In a sense, yes. He ensured any universe he takes Morty to will be one where Grandpa's the smartest, most powerful being around. That increases their survival odds. He's like a dad who childproofs a house, except the house is reality itself. On the other hand, narcissism with infinite collateral? Absolutely. Rick couldn't stomach the idea of not being special, so he slammed the door on all the universes where he isn't the best. He put his ego and comfort above trillions of lives he'll never know. It's the Cronenberg gamble on a multiversal scale. Better my world than theirs. We've seen Rick abandon one world for Morty. Now we see him cage countless worlds for his own supremacy. The pattern is clear and unsettling, but here's the paradox. Rick's family is safer in his central finite curve. Within this sandbox, Rick can solve almost any problem. The cost of that safety, though, was paid by strangers in realms Rick will never visit. So we ask, is the smartest man in the universe protecting his loved ones, or just playing God? And what happens when Rick's house of cards comes tumbling down? Fires rage across continents. And who's at the center of this chaos? Rick Sanchez, of course, doing whatever it takes to keep his family free. In the Season 3 premiere, Rick pulls off a coup for the ages. He infiltrates the Galactic Federation's mainframe and reduces their currency to worthlessness, instantly plunging the galactic government into anarchy. Planets riot, economies crumble, 6,000 worlds of the Federation erupt into chaos in one moment. Rick did that just to get Beth, Summer, and Morty home safe. And okay, maybe to satisfy his craving for McNugget sauce, but that's Rick for you. The result, Earth is liberated from alien rule, and the rest of the universe burns. To Beth and Summer, Rick is a hero for ousting the alien overlords. He literally saved Earth. But consider the collateral damage. Untold alien civilizations destabilized. Probably billions dead or destitute as the Federation implodes. Rick toppled an empire like flicking over a sandcastle. He's done it before, too. The citadel of Ricks got blown to bits as a side effect of that same scheme. With countless Ricks and Mortys on board, whenever Rick swings, entire societies shatter, and he usually walks away smiling. The moral calculus in Rick's mind seems to be, if it's between my family and your society, I'm picking my family. Every single time, counter-argument, perhaps Rick was striking at tyrants who deserved it. The Galactic Federation was an authoritarian regime. One could argue Rick simply hastened their downfall. In that lens, he's almost an anti-hero. Yes, he caused suffering, but maybe those aliens had it coming and the galaxy might rebuild in freedom. Rick himself even frames it to Morty as getting rid of a threat and his annoying son-in-law Jerry in one genius move. It's a justification drenched in arrogance. I'm right, they're wrong, so their lives weigh less. The show, however, never sugarcoats the cost. We see rubble and panic as Federation authority collapses. Morty, always the conscience, looks on in uneasy silence while Summer literally cheers Grandpa's badassery. We, the audience, are torn. Part of us does cheer. Rick saved Earth. But another part balks. At what cost? Rick has a term for this kind of strategy: waste the odds. In high-stakes situations, he rigs things massively in his favor, often by making sacrificial plays on a grand scale. He'll nuke a governing body, mutate a planet, even bait a predator with an entire timeline. Remember the vat of acid fiasco? Rick gave Morty a flawed save point device that led Morty to unintentionally kill hundreds of alternate Mortys by resetting timeline after timeline. When Morty realized the horror that each reset actually meant another Morty died and he just slid into that Morty's spot, he was devastated. Rick's response? He offered to merge all those timelines, essentially covering up the slaughter by fusing the universes into one and dumping the consequences on an alternate reality. Oh, and by the way, Rick admitted at the end that he orchestrated the entire thing to teach Morty a lesson, and he wouldn't waste their home reality on such a crappy lesson. Translation: he deliberately used a disposable universe for this experiment so their original world wouldn't be affected. Let that sink in. Rick literally created a scenario that killed countless versions of his grandson just to prove a point, and did it in a universe he cared nothing about. The scale of collateral damage in Rick's escapades ranges from a few hapless bystanders to entire civilizations or duplicate selves. No matter the scale, Rick almost never seems to flinch. But we occasionally catch hints of guilt. quiet, fleeting guilt buried under all that cynicism. After the vat of acid ordeal, when Morty is shattered by what he's done, Rick has a rare moment looking almost remorseful, right before he covers it with another joke. And recall the end of the Unity episode. Rick comes home heartsick and actually tries to kill himself in a moment of despair. He passes out before the laser can fire, but the intent was there. A traumatized genius on the verge of giving up. It's arguably the most vulnerable we ever see him. Why? Possibly the weight of his actions, the loneliness he's earned by being who he is, finally caught up to him. The show doesn't spell it out, but that failed suicide attempt screams volumes. Rick does have a conscience deep, one that maybe hurts like hell. He just drowns it in booze and burps so he can keep going. We've seen what Rick will do to save his family, anything. But what about the family itself? How do Morty and the others cope with being the cause of so much destruction? And worse, are they starting to become like Rick? Morty used to be a sweet, nervous 14-year-old who could barely handle science class, let alone interplanetary moral dilemmas. Now, after a few years with Rick, Morty has blood on his hands. Some by necessity, some by accident, and some because Rick taught him to pull the trigger. We've watched Morty's innocence erode bit by bit. The Morty who buried his own body was shattered, sure, but he kept going. By season 5, Morty can casually handle a gun turret during a random monster attack. He's adapting, and that's the darkest legacy of Rick's twisted loyalty. He may be grooming Morty to make the same ruthless choices one day. Consider the lesson of the Vat of Acid episode. Morty comes out of it horrified that he essentially massacred alternate versions of himself for selfish reasons. Rick's goal was to rub Morty's nose in the fact that actions have consequences, a lesson Morty did learn, brutally. But what else did Morty learn? Perhaps that sometimes to set things right, you have to do something unthinkable, like fusing timelines and living with the guilt. Morty's worldview is catching up to Rick's. In an infinite multiverse, you can justify anything if it means your survival. That's a scary transformation. We see glimpses of Morty actually embracing Rick's mindset. In one episode, Morty goes on a killing spree during Purge Night, taking out dozens of rich elitists with terrifying efficiency. Rick watches, impressed, and maybe a little concerned as Morty crosses a line. In another instance, Morty defies Rick, obtaining a death crystal that shows him visions of his future. By the end, Morty's so obsessed with his goal that he's willing to let Rick, well, a Rick clone, die. These are the fruits of Rick's influence. A grandson who is learning how to weigh lives on a cosmic scale. Even Summer and Beth catch the bug. Summer has helped Rick hack an entire planet's climate for a petty feud. Beth has battled galactic federations with him. The Smith family is dysfunctional as ever, but one thing binds them tighter than ever: the things they've survived and done because of Rick. Yet Morty isn't a passive sponge. He pushes back on Rick's nihilism. In the Cronenberg aftermath, Morty is the one who tells Summer, and thus the audience, about the parts Rick leaves behind, with bitterness in his voice. Morty knows it's messed up. Morty often serves as Rick's conscience, questioning the collateral damage, expressing empathy for creatures Rick would dismiss. This tension between them comes to a head whenever Morty asks, "Why, Rick? Why did you do that?" Those were real people. Sometimes Rick relents, rarely apologizing, but he might change course slightly if Morty is really upset. Other times Rick explodes in anger. "I don't need to explain myself, Morty." The dynamic is fraught. Morty idolizes Rick at times and detests him at others. In one universe, we've seen what happens when a Morty has enough of Rick's callousness. Evil Morty. That Morty literally engineered a massacre of Ricks and Mortys, blowing up the Citadel and escaping the central finite curve entirely. In doing so, evil Morty killed thousands, just like Rick would, all to get free of Rick's shadow. It's poetic and tragic. The only way a Morty could truly beat Rick was to become an even colder monster. Morty C-137, our Morty, isn't there yet. But you have to wonder, with each traumatic adventure, each moral line crossed, is Morty sliding closer to either becoming Rick or rebelling in some catastrophic way? This is the paradox of Rick's legacy. In trying to protect Morty from the big, bad multiverse, Rick is arguably stripping away Morty's soul. He's ensuring Morty survives, but maybe at the cost of Morty's innocence or even his goodness. If Morty becomes just like Rick, a man who can casually erase a universe for someone he loves, is that a victory or the ultimate failure? Rick might call it necessary, others would call it tragic. As viewers, we care about Morty. We cringe when we see him start to rationalize terrible things the way Rick does. We cheer when Morty occasionally says no to Rick's plans. In a way, Morty represents hope that someone in this family might choose a different path. But Rick's shadow is long. Morty literally carries Rick's genes, being his grandson, and increasingly carries his burdens. With each chapter of their story, Morty inches closer to the same precipice Rick hurled himself off long ago. That point of no return where you decide only your people matter and damn all other worlds. Will Morty make that same choice someday? Or will he find another way? The question extends to us, the audience. In Rick's place, would we do differently? If you had infinite universes at your fingertips and one person you truly loved in danger, would you burn one world to save them? 10 worlds? All worlds? So is Rick Sanchez a devil or a savior? After all this destruction in the name of family, Cronenberg worlds, collapsed multiverses, shattered empires, scarred grandkids, we face the ultimate Morty question.